John Scott, Vic Carucci, Jonathan Acosta in a very blustery Highmark Stadium here after the Bills outlast Tampa in an absolute slugfest. Let's start with the positives, and that is the resurgence of the passing game, unlike maybe we've seen since the Baltimore opener. And it's ironically coming after a bad start where you're like, Josh Allen is almost broken. But then he comes off and rips out 3 rushing, 3 passing touchdowns, 6 total in the passing game. Looks the best it has in months.
Well, it was impossible to look at how this game started with Josh Allen, throwing an incompletion on the first Bills play from scrimmage, following that up with the interception.
The chest pass.
Yeah, the chest pass as he's almost, as he's trying to avoid being sacked for a safety in the end zone. And he said he messed it up. He, leaned the wrong way, whatever. But it was hard to look at that and then not attach it to what we saw against Miami, because that was, that was awful in so many ways. But Josh Allen was pretty high on the list of what was awful in that game and awful with the passing game. The fact that they got it back together, he got it back together. He had, when the game was over, the MVP numbers that we're used to seeing from Josh Allen with the 6 touchdowns and the 300-plus passing yards, and just looking like, and again, running for 3, throwing for 3, but looking like the Josh Allen we expect him to be. But here's the thing. It took until week 11, Jonathan, to see that happen.
Spencer Brown, I think, said it best in the post-game locker room. Yeah, he had 2 interceptions, but he had 6 touchdowns. I'll take that every time. That's vintage Josh Allen performance. What struck out to me is how high it goes to show the ceiling of this offense, to where it doesn't necessarily to be going in full gear on all cylinders, whatever saying you want to use, for it to perform like this. Because even on the touchdown pass to Tyrell Shavers, Josh said he had a couple guys open his first 2 reads. He, for whatever reason, didn't throw it. And then it was a great job by Shavers to get open along the sideline, and then he finds him deep. So that's the improvisation sort of aspect of this offense that you really get with Josh Allen, is that even if the second read is there and he doesn't throw it, or it isn't there, he's able to continue to extend plays, keep things alive. I think we'll get to this more later on, but bring back a guy like Gabe Davis, right? I think there was a play where he connected on him in sort of an improv manner as well. Obviously, a guy that those two have a nice chemistry with each other, right? So I think, and the other part of this was a day where the running game wasn't going. I think the last 2 weeks we've seen defenses sort of maybe not sell out, but really place an emphasis on limiting James Cook and this run game. The Bills weren't able to get the passing game going in Miami the way they needed to. They were able to do it here against Tampa Bay, and here's the result, the 44-32 win.
If you're going to take anything of encouragement from a game that we've seen in the past month from this team, Kansas City was one thing, but to see the same thing happen where teams are just going to sell out to stop James Cook. The Bills have had no counter for that. I've been critical. We have of Joe Brady and his inability to have a counter punch when the fastball is not working. They found it today. It took a little bit of time, and it was happening with a bit of a reshuffled wide receiver group. We will get to who was not there after this. Let's get to the new pieces that were. Josh Palmer, back from injury. Gabe Davis, elevated from the practice squad. McCole Hardman, signed from the practice squad to the active roster. Those 3 guys there alone, adding a different dynamic here. And do you think it's as simple as those guys are doing things that maybe the way the group had been shaped previously were not?
I think you have to give credit to that. I think it's a factor. I don't know if it was the factor, because, again, I'll keep going back to Josh Allen and finding himself, after some troubling performances for most of the season where he didn't look like himself. That came together. But sure, it helped to have those guys doing some different things. The improvisational stuff that Jonathan mentioned, definitely important, and you have to have 2 sides to that. It's Josh's improvisation, but it's also what those receivers do, understanding, knowing where to be, because this guy is extending plays. And in watching tape of Tampa Bay before this game, one of their big issues, that it happened against Drake May, it happened against other quarterbacks they faced. When quarterbacks extended plays, that defense struggled. They could not handle that all that well, and they certainly didn't handle it well in this game. But give credit to the Bills, to Gabe Davis, to Tyrell Shavers, to all of them, and the running backs, who were a huge part of this. And in fact, statistically, James Cook was right up there with the numbers of catches and yard production. Of course, he got a touchdown as well, because once again, you exploited a defense that had shown before this game it didn't handle the short intermediate throws, which was why, and let's make this point too, guys, without Dalton Kincaid, right? He's got that hamstring injury he suffered against Miami. I think the conventional thought was him missing from this game would be an additional problem for a receiving corps that already had problems, missing its best pass catcher. That obviously was not the case.
It truly was the positive version, the ceiling maybe of the everybody eats offense, right? We've been critical of it before this season, but this is what it can look like when everything is flowing well. I want to make these 2 points. Mecole Hardman, his impact more in the return game, right? Yeah. He had that first explosive return. Sean McDermott noted it. That really helped this Bills offense in this game. I believe they had 6 kickoff returns for over 200 yards, averaged 39 yards per kickoff return. This team had great field position all day long. Is that repeatable going forward? Odds are likely not to that extent. How much of a factor did that play in this game? We'll have to sort of see if they can replicate it or what they can do when they have to drive longer fields in future games. The other part of it is, you mentioned this, the running backs, right? We've been begging to see James Cook involved in the pass game for weeks now. Well, what happened? They finally got the ball to him in the pass game, not just once but twice. He finds the end zone. And it felt oftentimes, especially in that stretch in the second half of last year where the Bills offense was really rolling, that Ty Johnson was a factor in the pass game as well. Now, that's been a little bit maybe of a tricky balance this year because James Cook has been playing so well that it's like, how do you take him off the field? But at the same time, how do you get Ray Davis and Ty Johnson more involved when they were such a big, maybe not a big part, but they were in a big enough part of the offense last year. Ty Johnson is a really good receiving back, third down back, and you saw the impact that he can have on the field when he had, 52-yard touchdown catch, just throw it off to the side. We've seen Khalil Shakir maybe the only other player in that role able to sort of take a catch that's behind the line of scrimmage or near the line of scrimmage and break it off. Ty Johnson has that ability. I think back to last year, the game he had against Detroit, against the Lions, another sort of type of shootout game. He had over 100 receiving yards in that game, right? So I think we've sort of criticized Joe Brady a lot so far this season. I think this game we have to give him his flowers in the sense of this was the embodiment of the vision he has for the everybody eats offense and sort of getting back to some guys in some sort of situations that he hadn't been in previous weeks.
The Ty Johnson touchdown after Allen missed him for a surefire first down when he threw an interception on fourth down. James Cook, that's a play we saw a year ago that Brady dialed up kind of out of the backfield on the wheel. So, again, I agree with it. And the Cook one coming after my wife texted me, is James Cook playing in the game today? So, yes, he finally got involved eventually. Yep. The one guy who was not involved because he was a healthy scratch is Keon Coleman. Missed a meeting on Friday. Sean McDermott sitting him down today. This is not the first disciplinary thing he's dealt with here. Not even just this season. Sat out a first series against New England for disciplinary reasons. Sat out the first quarter for disciplinary reasons his rookie season. We know what he's not doing on the football field when he is out there, even questions of effort last week at Miami. We're stacking all of this together here, Vic. We've had questions about Keon Coleman before this transpired and unfolded here today. Where do things stand with him now?
I think in some ways you can look at this as the bottom finally falling out. I think, Sean McDermott made reference to using a strike system, like a baseball strike system. Look, if we're counting, it is 3. If you're going to count his rookie year and missing that quarter against Jacksonville for disciplinary reason, then the first series against New England earlier this year, and then the suspension or I shouldn't say suspension, but the benching for the Tampa Bay game. I don't know that we've come to a resolution here. It sounds like this was all about. Okay, he'll learn, or it's a lesson. He's still. The coach is saying the right things as far as I have faith that he'll learn from this, and teammates are saying. I think the teammates were pretty candid in saying, it's the kind of thing that you got to kind of straighten your act out. I'm paraphrasing, but that seemed to be the tone from teammates in the locker room. But I don't know. When you mix it with what we haven't seen on the field over 2 seasons, and you consider that as a second-round pick, trading down but targeting him as a second-rounder, Brandon Beane and that personnel staff, to make this guy the guy to replace Stephon Diggs, basically be the number 1 receiver in this core, he hasn't come close to doing anything to earn that role. And if anything, he has demonstrated that it's a big miss. And I think after, a thing like missing meetings or missing a meeting or being late for a meeting, whatever it was, those are bad signs. This is late in the year, guys, late in his second season. So this isn't as if, okay, he stumbled because he just didn't know better and he's just got to learn. I think we're past that point. I'm not sure where it goes from here.
You asked where we are with Keon Coleman. I think we're at a fork in the road in his Bills career, right? Late in the second season, he either learns from this, and in the words of Deion Dawkins, when he said that he talked to him, this doesn't happen again. Or it does happen again, and maybe the consequences are more extreme than just being a healthy scratch, right? I think Deion Dawkins had the quote that stands out the most in the post-game locker room. He said, listen, pats on the back are over for Keon Coleman. It's time for him to grow up, and he knows it, and he knows that he's on the hot seat now. And it's a place where only Keon Coleman has placed himself through these disciplinary issues, right? So you would think for a guy who is already under heat for effort, for lack of performance, for already being benched for a drive and benched for a quarter, he would be on his best behavior, knowing that, hey, even if I'm not getting it done on the field, let me show this team that I'm still doing everything that I'm supposed to do as a professional so that they continue to put their trust in me. Instead, he goes out and is late for a team meeting on Friday and now gets himself a healthy inactive, and then the offense comes out and has its best performance of the season. So I think, again, this either has to be a moment where he's a young kid, right? Like, people are going to have learning moments. But this has to be the learning moment, because I'm not sure he's going to get many more after this one.
You have to earn trust in this league, and we're not just going to dive into and grab onto Sean McDermott isms and things like that, but it is absolutely true. It's true in any facet of life, any sort of business here. When you come in new and young, you have to earn the opportunities. You have to earn the trust. You have to earn the leeway should you get out of line in any capacity. His performance on the field hasn't allowed for any latitude for anything off of it, and now you're putting it all in a bucket here. The Bills, as a second-round pick, and after this season entering his third year, they're not beholden to him. No. They're not crippled by something contractually. They're certainly not crippled by anything that would impact the flow or the production of the offense overall. He has to go from this point forward and prove himself and earn everything, and frankly, earn a roster spot, because Gabe Davis, off a major knee injury, off the street, a year and a half removed from playing for this team, has more trust and more of an impact with Josh Allen and this offense than Keon Coleman does, and the list can go on and on.
No doubt. And, I feel that if maybe you could call it a bit of a build or the beginnings of a build to the future of what this receiving core might look like, and it's certainly within the realm to say that this receiving core will not have Keon Coleman in it next year. That's not a crazy thought. In fact, that seems like that where it's trending, and to what you said in terms of Deion Dawkins' quote, that this is like, okay, one more slip-up. We know what's going to happen. You're not going to be on this team, and we still don't know what the future holds for Coleman. I have my doubts there, but putting that aside, this is a receiving core, and maybe this game became some kind of a turning point, possibly, for what it could look like going forward. I think the cast is going to still be different. I still think, I know it's way too early to look ahead beyond what's in front of the team this season, but boosting that core is got to be a priority.
And all of this in the context of the disciplinary issues and the lack of performance, in the context of the Bills needing someone to step up in the wide receiver room, right? It's not like they have all these Pro Bowlers and all pros at the wide receiver room, and he's stuck behind them on the depth chart. They've given him sort of the way they gave Cole Bishop every opportunity to take the starting spot, and now Cole Bishop is sort of rewarding that. Keon Coleman has done the opposite of that. He's taken the trust, he's taken the opportunities, and failed to take advantage of them. And now he's in a position where, Gabe Davis comes back. Keon Coleman drafted many thought to play the Gabe Davis role. Well, who's going to play the Gabe Davis role better than Gabe Davis, right? And now he's back with the team, right? You have Mecole Hardman, who's been added. He does his role. Khalil Shakir, obviously, in his role. Dalton Kincaid didn't play in this game, but once he comes back from his injury, he's a center point of this offense. So there's no guarantee that even when Coleman is back on the field, that he's going to be getting the opportunities that he was receiving earlier in the season.
Right, let's shift to defense, and let's just put it right here. The run defense, atrocious once again. And this is something we could rewind the tape dating back to week 1
Yeah.
on this field against Derrick Henry, and on and on and on. Devon Achane, the list goes on here. Every time we have these discussions, whether it's Coleman, the passing offense, whatever, we look at it the present but forecasting in the future. What in the world can they do at this point in the season? The wide receiver group added some personnel, but the defense is starting to get whole as well as it's going to be for the rest of the season. And my goodness, Vic and Jonathan, like, they cannot stop the running game. It was Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker.
Yeah.
It was the third time this year this team has allowed over 200 rushing yards, and Sean Tucker was the bell cow behind this. What's going on?
I thought that was Walter Payton or Barry Sanders. No, it was Sean Tucker, undrafted free agent from Syracuse. Look, it is bad. I don't think that it's going to get better. I think that is the weak spot of this defense and an Achilles heel of this team. However, I think it's still going to come back to, as we've seen in the past, they have to rely on the offense to carry it, and especially the passing it. Whatever we saw today as the antidote, and you had the 9 lead changes, those are the kinds of things that are going to happen when you're allowing a team to run the way the Buccaneers did. And if the Buccaneers had healthier people in its receiving core, on its offensive line, might have had a whole different outcome offensively. To push if not win the game, Tampa Bay winning the game, but certainly push the Bills to a greater extent to have to do what it did to ultimately win it. 44 points, got it done. Wonderful, and that has been a formula that they've won games in that 40 number, right? 3 times now, right? That they've surpassed 40 points. So I think when we're looking at this defense, it's still about younger people, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, and I don't know, is it from a health standpoint, getting other people back, obviously, today with Daquan Jones being there and actually playing out some end, which was interesting. So I think there's some mixing and matching and shuffling. I don't know that it's just a matter of getting healthier or just younger people growing into their role. But guys, I once again, I'm not, just as I guess I expressed doubts about where the Keon Coleman story goes, I'm not sure that this run defense is going to improve dramatically before the year's over.
The run defense, it is what it is. It wouldn't make any logical sense to expect a massive change in that. The same way that at this point I don't expect a big change in the third and long defense. Yeah. It's been that way for a year and a half. The Bills have shown us by now that's just who they are until they make either significant scheme changes or significant personnel changes on that front. I think this is a bigger picture idea, but work with me here. I think back to the Indianapolis Colts of the Peyton Manning era and the way that they were built on defense. They were built to play on defense off of an offense that would score a lot of points, take the lead, and force opposing teams to have to throw the ball. And then you had Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis attacking the quarterback, getting after him. But when teams could play from in front and run the ball, it really impacted the way the Colts wanted to do things. I think it's not a perfect way, but I think that's the Bills sort of have to operate going forward, going off of what Vic said. This offense has to score points to get the opposing offense out of a ball control type of style, running the ball. Because I think back to the first half, there was a point where the Bucs had 11 minutes up on the Bills in terms of time of possession. The Bills end up winning this game, but that's not a sustainable recipe for success, right? So you have to make teams throw the ball more on you, where you have a pretty good pass defense, relatively speaking, this year. You have solid pieces in the secondary, the emergence of Cole Bishop. Max Hairston has been playing well as a rookie. Obviously, you have Christian Benford, who you paid. You have guys that I think have shown this year that can get after the quarterback, and especially with Joey Bosa. You have to put offenses in a position where you can play to your strengths as a defense, because it's very clear that your weakness is the run defense. And if opposing offenses are able to just run the ball, it doesn't matter if, like you said, if it's Sean Tucker, Devon Achane, Bijan Robinson, the list is endless. If you have a running back with a beat, they're going to be able to run the ball in this Bills defense.
I'm going to put a bow on this because it's cold and really windy.
Please do.
I'm the sports director, so I can decide to do that. Cole Bishop, as you said, he's cemented himself. I'm not going to anoint him the next All-Pro back there, but I think he's done enough to say, all of our conversation and criticism and concerns and questions about him at the back end, I think the Bills have found at least half of their safety tandem of the future. And I want to give a shout out to Terrell Bernard. I think it was the best we have seen from Bernard since early in the season. Bobby Babich saying during the week that Bernard's still trying to find his way through the injury. I don't know if he's not 100% or just simply trying to find ways to navigate through whatever limitations he may be doing. But he was flying around on the field, and he looked the closest to Terrell Bernard, the middle linebacker that they just paid and you feel is the drumbeat in the middle of the defense. It's the closest we've seen from him as well. Daquan Jones also a big play at the end. As you mentioned, TJ Sanders kicking outside the defensive end. That's kind of the state of the defensive line. Short week for the Bills. They're down in Houston for Thursday Night Football later on this week. With Jonathan Acosta, Vic Carucci, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.